Welcome back to another episode of Step Back with Miles and Owen. We are going to have a range of topics, and one reason why we wanted to start this show was to be able to talk about some stuff that is bothering us, that's happening in the day to day, and that we can just react to. And last night, there was a report right before the games tipped off that Holly Rowe on SportsCenter said that Aaliyah Boston had deleted her Twitter account because of just some of the venom that she's been receiving, and that she said she can basically only use TikTok in terms of social media right now. And the Fever are off to a rough 0-4 start, and Aaliyah has not played as well as she has last year. None of that is relevant to the treatment of her as a human being, and she's a tremendous, sweet, uh very compassionate human being, but that's irrelevant because this should not happen to anybody. But I still think it's important to point out that, like, the faceless cowards that are on Twitter hiding behind, fake avatars and whatever, they're bringing this negativity to a really beautiful young woman who is an exceptional athlete and role model, and just really great at everything that she does. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about it because Owen and I were sitting at the Barclays Center when this came through yesterday, and I was just like alternating. It was probably, well into the first quarter of that game before I could shake. Just I was alternating between being really angry and really sad, and I just couldn't really articulate it. So I'm happy to talk about it with you guys. So, how did you both experience that, and just how do you feel we can be welcoming to new audiences? Because the Caitlin Clark effect is real, and none of this falls on Caitlin herself. She's the entry point for a lot of people, but some people have come into this space disingenuously.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. I think it's something that we're all learning to navigate in real time. We have been in this space for a long time, and there have been a lot of issues that we've discussed for a long time. And I think charter flights is something we'll talk more about. The CBA is something we'll talk more about in depth on other episodes as it pertains to uh, pay structure and as it pertains to the TV deal, so many elements of it. But I don't think any of us who have been talking about charter flights, who've been talking about expansion, expected all of this to just like switch in a snap of the finger. And oh, we have charter flights now. Oh, we're gonna have 16 teams now. It's just all this stuff that we've been talking about for years, being like, when's it gonna happen? It felt like it happened in like 2 weeks. So we are all navigating in real time the massive, overwhelming positive benefits of this growth. And I think anecdotally, a lot of us feel that. We feel very full. I feel very full because a lot of my friends, a lot of my family are texting me so excited. Oh, what team should I get into? There's so much positivity, and we're feeling that. And that is so cool. But that makes it all the more important to recognize and to call out when there are manifestations of the opposite of that, the downsides of this massive growth, and what players are going through online in terms of a completely new segment of fans entering this space in bad faith. And I would hope, and I think, and maybe this is just the optimist in me, that the majority of the fans entering the space, I feel very confident in saying that the large majority of the fans entering this space right now, whether Caitlin is their entry point, whether Angel Reese is their entry point, whoever, are doing it in good faith, and we're so happy to have them. But there are very vocal, loud people online who are being extremely nasty to players like Aaliyah Boston, and it is unacceptable. It's sickening, and it is something we need to discuss because you are not doing. If Caitlin Clark is the reason you are getting into women's basketball right now, you aren't even doing her any favors. You're doing no one any favors by being a lame man online behind an avatar of an NBA player. Like, and we'd love to ignore it, but you could see it on Aaliyah's face last night. She played her best game of the season. It doesn't even matter how she's been playing. Like, we know how great she is. All the stuff Miles said is so apt. But she had an amazing game. It was their best game of the season by far. They're 0-4 because they've played all 4 games against two of the best teams in the league, Connecticut, New York. Aaliyah was great last night, was really showing some positive steps, makes an amazing move at the end. Like I just that was one of the things just separately on the basketball side of it. I'm like, what a great play, what a great move she made. Just couldn't finish the shot. And then just broke my heart. I'm watching this at Barclays Center after we covered New York and Seattle. And I've got the volume off because we're still in the arena about to go to post game. And Aaliyah misses the shot, and you can just see on her face just holding in emotions. And it's heartbreaking because no one deserves this. Like, no one deserves this type of treatment. And it's helpful to no one. And it's pathetic. And why are you entering this space if you're going to just talk shit about players? And this is something that we're going to be seeing. We are going to be seeing the sexism. We are going to be seeing the racism that happens online every day in every corner of the internet. And that has been happening in women's basketball just on a smaller scale forever. Now we're seeing that in really horrifying, massive numbers. And it's fucking scary, to be completely honest with you. And all I want to do is uplift Aaliyah and just drown out these lame, insecure men who think that they can waltz into this space and just be a fan of one player and then shit on everyone else. I want to drown them out and ignore them and leave them to their pathetic lives, because we are going to drown them out with love and support and appreciation. Because Aaliyah Boston, like you said, Miles, it doesn't even matter. It's not relevant that she is the most joyous person. Like that doesn't matter. No one deserves this treatment. But as an aside, she is the most joyous person. She's a national champion. She's a professional broadcaster on the record-breaking Final Four telecast. Like, we could just go on and on about her accomplishments, about who she is as a person, about who she is as a player. We're going to drown these people out by appreciating and uplifting Aaliyah Boston because she deserves it.
Well, let's just stay there for a second, because not as a joke, in total transparency, a lot of these fans that have come along for the ride with Caitlin have watched 4 games of Aaliyah Boston. So WNBA only. Let's just say last year was one of 6 rookies ever to start the All-Star game. She was the unanimous rookie of the year, the first player ever as a rookie to lead the league in field goal percentage. She's probably making this year's Olympic team. She's been with the Olympic training camp, and we've watched her expand her game. So all of that against a small sample size of 4 games. I do want to shout out both Nekias Duncan and Mark Schindler, who both put out some pieces last night and today about Aaliyah's struggles early this year with this short pick and roll that Caitlin likes to run, which is not something that Aaliyah had done much in college. And I think it's important to remind everybody that a month ago, Caitlin Clark was just drafted a month ago. 6 weeks ago, she was still playing in college. So the runway, this on-ramp for these players to go from college to pro and to build that chemistry in such a short time is non-existent. So it's going to take time, and it was going to take time with this Fever team. But to understand that Aaliyah Boston has already, in a very short time, established herself as a pro, and run that highlight reel back yesterday of Caitlin hitting that amazing go-ahead 3 where she's in transition. And it starts with, yes, a heavy overhand Aaliyah Boston block. And the possession before she missed that shot, Aaliyah had tied the game On that short pick and roll at the top of the key where she pulled up for that mid-range jumper, which
On the
is
same short pick and
the same thing, right?
roll.
Yeah. So like my problem last night is exactly what you bring up too, is that we saw her just experiencing everything that was off the basketball court in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Dropping to 0-4, that fucking sucks. Especially to play 4 games in 7 days, right? Against top tier interior competition when you're talking about the physicality of the Sun and the Liberty, it's overwhelming. But to know what we knew from that report before the game started, and then to see that on her face, we knew it was not just her being upset that she missed a shot. We knew it's because she has been drowning in all of this hate off of the court and is internalizing that. So if you want to talk about some of her struggles on the court, it exists beyond it as well. And I just really hope, and we talked about it in our first episode of Step Back, where Indiana, I want to know what some of this internal veteran leadership is looking like, because I hope this team is just holding on to her and making sure that she knows that they've got her. Because yeah, she does not have an enemy in the league. So I just want that to be extended, that same grace to be extended out to the fan bases, who I know are just looking at everything through their prism, that their corn colored glasses or whatever it is, however they got here. And again, it's not at all on Caitlin. Caitlin's not responsible for any of the new, well, she's responsible for the new eyeballs, but she's not responsible for the mouths attached to those new eyeballs, I guess I should say. So I want to make sure that that's clear. KDOT, how, because dating back to South Carolina, this is not the first time that social media has been abusive to Aaliyah Boston. Could you fill us in a little bit on some of that history, and especially ESPN? We've seen her upset with that coverage before, and kind of the trajectory that's gotten us to this point that she might have a shorter leash with social media.
Yeah, so it's first off, it's incredibly corny for fans and new fans in particular to judge Aaliyah Boston the way that they have been doing, especially in these first 4 games. We have to understand that from that dynamic, as you said, this isn't the first time that she has experienced exposure in this light from a negative standpoint, from a negative perspective. We saw that when she missed the potential go ahead shot to play for the national championship about 2 or 3 years ago against Stanford. That's all ESPN highlighted basically, and that's all the magazines highlighted basically. That's all the newspapers highlighted basically, and she vowed that she would end the following season with the biggest smile on her face. And you could even see from that standpoint, they didn't even highlight the smile on her face at the end of that national championship when they won against UConn the following year. So it just goes to show the stigma of the exposure. And if we want to get extremely transparent, how Black women are treated in national spaces and what they want to see. And what frustrates me more is that we have people, especially men and Black men in this space, who fail to protect the Black women that are in front of the cameras, but yet want to be this protector behind the cameras, and have the DM saying, "Oh, we're here with you, we're there with you," but then won't do it publicly. And again, when we're talking about the exposure of what these new fans are seeing, you also have to understand that this is a different dynamic from a league standpoint. This league itself has shot itself in the foot so much from a marketing standpoint that now new fans don't even know how to act and how to react to certain things that happen in this manner. And for her to have the ball of emotions in her face last night, and for her to be so cognizant of not repeating the same thing that happened to her 3 years ago, it was definitely soothing for me because it goes to show how much of a professional she is, and I definitely respect her for that. And I also want to protect her in that respect as well because yes, she is. Uh, I would say she is a national figure, even with her analyst work for different networks. So with that, I always want to educate everyone, and I want to first off say, new fans, this is not the NBA, this is not the NFL, this is not the major leagues. This is something that you're going to come into, and we're not pandering, and we're not trying to protect women because they like us or we like them. Like that has absolutely nothing to do with it. It is just pure respect for people's human lives. At the end of the day, these players are still human. And for you to hide behind an avatar and for you to hide behind um, different profiles with less than 20 followers just so you can get your rocks off about stuff that's irrelevant to what we're trying to do to grow this particular type of league, it really is very, very childish and is extremely um, disrespectful because I guarantee you, if I was that same person hiding behind an avatar and a profile talking about your mom or your sister or of anybody who is very close to you who is a woman, you would not take that lightly. So I suggest every time you do think about tweeting, every time you do think about commenting, think about your mom, think about your sister, think about your grandmother, because it really is corny. It's extremely corny, and you guys are way too old. And maybe you're not way too old. Maybe that's just who you are. Maybe that's probably what it is. Maybe it's really just who you are. You just have that. You just have something in you that is just extremely corny. So for that, I do wish Aaliyah Boston the best. You are going to kill. I know that the first part of the first four games has been rough, but respectfully, you're playing the New York Liberty and the Connecticut Sun, two of the top four teams that finished last year in the semifinals. So this isn't a continue to kill this season, and step back is always behind you with that. So I'll just leave it there.
I've got several things to respond to because lots of great points. I think the one thing that I would push back on is you had said it was soothing to see Aaliyah not reduced to tears yesterday because you've seen a growth, right? You've seen that she went through that and saw the worst of what that could turn into. And for me, that's traumatic. That is us witnessing the trauma that she dealt with, where for an entire year, ESPN kept on going back to that crying photo, despite being asked time and time again that Aaliyah has to regulate her emotions on the court because she does not trust that she won't become a meme or that she won't be that. And you talked about how black women are presented by the media in the light. It is very, very intentional that that was the photo that was circulated, that it's not her smiling after winning the championship. And even that picture is just where she's forcing a smile and has tears behind it. And that still hurts because you know everything that she had to go through to get to that too. Um,
Exactly.
so like that really sucks. But Yeah, and just to your other point about what you were talking about, where this league is different, right? That this league is obviously it's not as large and as long established as some of the major men's sports, but I think what goes hand in hand with that, which I think is often conflated with when people are trying to push back on us saying like, oh, like you're coddling them or treating these women with kid gloves. I think what we are aware of in this space is the NBA. I was talking to Lucas Kaplan about this before the game yesterday when we were talking about the 90 to 60 minute shoot around availability. And he said, oh, the Nets don't do any of that. They'll give you like on game day shoot arounds, they'll give you one or two people maybe. And like that's all they're going to do. It's all because those players, they know that the viewership is coming regardless of what
Right.
they give you, what they're doing, because that league's been around for more than 75 years. That's established. Every player that comes into this space in the WNBA is forced into this role, whether or not they are the most charismatic or talkative or, just anything. They're forced into this role where they have to be available to the media because not enough people know their stories. And they all have to take on this role of growing the game. So they don't have the advantage to say, no, I don't want to have that conversation. But what that also means is that it is a much smaller pool. When you're talking shit about somebody online, they're talking directly to them. And I know unless you're someone like Kevin Durant who wants all the smoke with fans, the rest of these guys are not managing their own accounts. They're not looking at any of the hate. And that's very, very healthy. That's also a privilege that the WNBA does not have. These
Right.
players are asked by the league, by their teams, by their agents to talk to the fans, to engage, because they are ambassadors for a still growing league. So there's an access there. And that's, I think, where the difference is. And that's conflated with how this country as a whole treats this population of Black women, of queer women, of just women that are athletic, right? That are not fitting into the mold of what our society wants them to do. And we saw this that football player from Kansas City last week, and that I know that's a whole other thing, but like him having the top selling jersey in the NFL right now we get these constant reminders about how much these people don't give a shit about women at all. And now it's just this weird hyperbolic, like not hyperbolic. It's this weird like we've hit this weird place where a lot of people that do not like women have now entered this women's sports space. And yesterday when I was like I should not, but went back at one of those trolls and then gave a response, and then I looked at his page and it's all the retweets of where Trump is beating Biden in the polls and things like that, and I'm like, I'm wasting my time and my energy, and it's not worth it in this space. So like, sorry, now I'm rambling. But it all comes back to just treat these women with empathy and respect. That's not doing them a disservice.
Right.
That's not saying that you're not holding them to a standard as competitors. I think the most disrespect that I've seen towards a player in terms of coddling them and in terms of disrespecting them is when we see the takes on from Colin Cowherd saying, why are they guarding Caitlin Clark full court, or they should have given her an easier schedule. That I think is a lot more of that just patronizing
From
voice.
the same from the same people, from the
Yep.
same fans.
Yep.
Okay. You're
So
yep.
that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, that is, you're saying to a competitor, don't compete, right? That's where you're actually not having these conversations in good faith. So yeah, it's just treat them with respect, treat them as professionals. If Aaliyah has a bad game, yes, you can say this is what Aaliyah's not doing well. There's nothing wrong with that. Has she been
Right.
performing below what her expectations of herself are through 4 games this season? Yes. Okay. What can she do better? What can she do better? And that's why I brought up Mark and Nikias talking about seeing the differences in scheme. It's also ignoring, because a lot of fans and a lot of media don't know how to watch and evaluate defense, is a large part of what Aaliyah is bringing to the floor, and her rebounding and just some of her physicality, all of her help, especially for a team that needs help on the perimeter with defense when their guards get blown by. And that's not to take a shot at anybody in particular, but that's just what the reality is. Yes, you can be critical, but don't be nasty. That's it.
Facts.
I think there's this, this is going to sound like such an obvious point up front, but toxic masculinity is so pervasive in sports. It's crazy, and it's obvious, and it's glaring. And there is an attitude that two things that aren't mutually exclusive are treated as mutually exclusive. And those two things are respect these players as competitors and don't treat coverage of this league with kid gloves, don't baby anyone. And then the other thing is like compassion and humanity. And folks act like having compassion to a human being who is going through it is soft. I had so many replies. I had a tweet that was literally the picture of Aaliyah smiling after winning the national championship, which, to your point, Miles, is in itself a little bit heartbreaking because it comes with all of those feelings of everything that she was forced to go through because of ESPN's racist coverage of her after that Stanford game. And to then act like it is soft to just reach out and be like, she's going through it, we need to be there for her, as if this community we built isn't meaningful. Like that is so lame to me. Like K-Dot said, that is so corny to act like we at once can't hold in our mind that these women are so freaking talented and competitive and spectacular, and that we respect them as competitors, and we are not in any way trying to say like, hey, oh, we need to like baby these players. No, not at all. But also, if you see someone on the verge of tears who has gone through it because sports media is really racist and really sexist, why would you not want to be compassionate in that moment? She's 23 years old or 22. Like, what are we doing here? And this is where it gets really dangerous when we act like men's sports is the ideal for everything, that growth just means getting to where men's sports is. Yeah, we want the viewership numbers to be the same as the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, South Carolina beating Iowa had a higher rating than any NBA Finals game in half a decade. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. But besides that, like, just be a normal human, just be compassionate. And I think you said, Miles, like, you know, these people don't give a shit about women. That's true, but it's even more dangerous than that. Like they want to see players like Aaliyah Boston embarrassed, and like they get joy out of seeing a Caitlin Clark, like, you know, talking shit. They want to hold this white player in high regard and watch her like embarrass everyone else. And that shit is really scary and really toxic, and something that we need to be very intentional about as media, because the way that we portray athletes is really important. And if I see another graphic of side by side Sabrina with a big smile on her face, and then Asia Wilson with like a snarl and like a you know, like that's intentional. That's not nothing. That is actually like very pervasive in this space. And the Aaliyah example was even more harmful because it wasn't a competitive snarl. It was tears. It was a college kid going through it in front of the world. And ESPN decided to put that in everyone's face for a full year instead of highlighting all of the overwhelming positives of this person and their journey. So there's a lot to it, but I'm like, yo, if I see one more, it's just block. It's block and move on. It's ignore, because to act like it's mutually exclusive to at once be like, oh, you wanted the league to grow? Well, this is what growth is. Well, it shouldn't be. It
Yeah.
really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be people getting death threats on Twitter after they miss a
Facts.
penalty kick. Like that is just, it's just being like a compassionate person. So just be normal. Don't be corny. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think like that's where we can kind of tie a bow on this conversation for now, because I know that we can get stuck here. And there's a lot of really, really positive stuff that going on, as we've said at the top, in terms of when you look at everything that this new audience, in terms of just audience as a whole, has brought in terms of sponsors wanting to come and throw their money at the W, because I believe that's why we're seeing these expansion teams all of a sudden crop up so quickly, because we know that Kathy Engelbert's been working on it for years, but now teams now ownership groups, potential ownership groups are like, oh, I see the path. That's why I believe Charters came out of nowhere, is because
Yeah.
Delta
Oh
was
yeah,
like, oh, this is positive PR for us.
yep.
That's why I think none of the teams were prepared for it, because
Which, by the way,
yeah,
hilarious how how they fumbled the positive PR. They had the
yeah,
biggest slam dunk in history and still fumbled it. But that's another podcast. That is another
yeah.
episode of Step Back that we will surely record.
That's but yeah, my final point on this is just like it's hard to now see the WNBA Twitter. I know is not a perfect family. I know that there's a lot of discourse that has existed for years, but there's even more of a divide now, I think, that we're seeing between the new fans and the old fans, and it's gotten to a point where there are a lot of conversations that are hard to have, that new fans are not ready to be having. And yes, ideally it would be terrific for all of us that have been in this space for a long time to just be welcoming with open arms. But we also have a responsibility to push back on when we're seeing some of this really awful shit go down that has been going down predating this rookie class. And I do understand why, for new fans that just want to casually get into the game, it's easy for them to say, I just want to tune in, learn a couple of new players, and then just vibe and watch hoops. But without the larger context, without understanding why the video put out by the league that highlighted four white performances is not a once in a lifetime fumble moment that happened, but is just the latest in a series of them. It's important to, if you're engaging with the on court, to understand the context of the off court, because these players have
Right.
fought and battled for every inch of that. So yeah, we're going
Absolutely.
to talk a lot more on Step Back about all of this. But I appreciate you guys for having this conversation too, because as you know, last night, Owen, I needed an outlet for it, and I needed to sleep on it too.
Yep.
And just sending Aaliyah all of our best, because she is a superstar on off the court. Um, and it hurts. It really hurts knowing that she's internalizing so much of this, and I hope that some of the support is also trickling in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, and I definitely agree with you, Miles. We're gonna get agreements, and we're gonna get pushback, and that's the importance of having the conversation. We can't be friends if we're just agreeing with each other 100%. We just can't, because we have to show each other the dialogue, and we have to show each other the context between what this subject actually is, and that you're right. It sucks for her to have to do that. Like, it totally sucks for her to have to do that. But guess what, Aaliyah? Us three, we love you. We know how much of a superstar you are. We know how much you're going to continue to kill the way that you're going to kill this season and moving forward in your career. So you always have fans in us. even if it's just us three.